7. 6.5 furlongs. Pure sprint should be exciting. It's fillies and mares 4 and up, this allowance optional claiming. So the stakes are pretty high.
Yeah.
To help us break this down, well, we've got the Brisnet race entries. Those have all the past performance data. You know, we've got the racing form report. They always have those expert predictions. So let's see if we can, I don't know, maybe pick a winner. Or at least narrow down the field a little, get some good bets in.
Yeah, it's always fun to really look at a race like this. You've got, these experienced horses, but you always have those potential rising stars. The key is to look past just the surface and really try to find, those hidden gems. That might give us an edge.
Yeah, okay. Let's start with the Racing Form's top pick, Ellen Mishkin. She's getting a lot of buzz, and her stats look good. Prime power rating of 130.2. That's way higher than anybody else in the field. Now, for those who don't know about prime power, it's basically an all-in-one rating. It takes into account, their whole performance history, their class level, recent speed figures, jockey and trainer stats, everything. Really powerful tool. You can assess, how good a horse might do.
And on top of that prime power rating, she's got a trainer who's on fire right now. Linda Rice is winning 29% with those horses that move from sprints to routes and back to sprints. And that's the same pattern that Ellen Mishkin is following in this race.
Plus, she's got a talented Carmouche in the saddle, 21% win rate with early pace horses.
Yeah, but here's where we need to apply some critical thinking, because while Ellen Mishkin looks great, on paper, her last race, showed some declining form and speed. So it's a reminder. We can't just look at, single data points. You got to think about the trend.
Right. One race doesn't tell the whole story.
So how concerning is that dip in form? I mean, should we be worried about Ellen Mishkin at all?
It's definitely a yellow flag, but not necessarily a deal breaker. We have to dig deeper, look at the circumstances of that last race. Was it tougher competition? Maybe the track conditions weren't good for her. We need to find out.
Okay, point taken. Let's move on to the Racing Form's second pick, Maggy's Palace. She's got a solid prime power rating, 127.8, and consistently performs well at this class level. Plus her trainer, James Ryerson, he does really well with these allowance horses. But what stands out to me is her running style. She's a late runner, and that could be a huge advantage in this race, especially if those front runners go out fast, burn themselves out. In a sprint race, it's all about strategy.
Right.
If the pace is hot early, then a late runner like Maggy's Palace, she can sit back, conserve her energy, and then make a powerful move in the final stretch. And her speed figures lately, they've been trending upwards. So it seems like she's in good form, ready to go.
Okay, so we've got a potential front runner in Ellen Mishkin and a strong closer in Maggy's Palace. So let's move on to the Racing Form's third pick, Maize Zing Dotie. She's a multiple allowance race winner. So that catches my eye. And she knows this track. She's raced at Aqueduct before. But there's one big question. She hasn't raced in over 60 days. Is she going to be ready, after that long layoff?
Yeah, that's a big question with Maize Zing Dotie. Layoffs can be tricky. Some horses, they come back strong, but some they need a lot more time to get back to their best. Now, her trainer, Chris Englehart, he's got a good win rate, 22% with horses coming back from 60 days or more.
So there's a chance she could be ready to go. And if she is, and she's a front runner, so we can see a very exciting start with, Maize Zing Dotie and Ellen Mishkin potentially going for the lead.
Yeah, exactly. That early battle for the lead could be key. It'll be interesting to see how those front runners manage their energy and how the closers, they're going to position themselves to take advantage of that.
This is shaping up to be a pretty thrilling race. I mean, we've got potential front runners, a strong closer, and a horse with a long layoff who could shake things up. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we got to talk about the Racing Form's dark horse picks, Clover Street and True Empress.
The dark horses. These are the horses that might not get as much attention, but they could surprise us. Clover Street, for example, she tied for the highest last race speed rating in the field.
That's right, 85. And she consistently competes well at this level.
And then we have True Empress. She has some strong dirt speed figures, and she just switched trainers. So sometimes, a change of scenery, it can do wonders for a horse.
Like a fresh start, right? A new trainer might, be able to see something, some hidden potential. But with so many contenders here, how do we even start to narrow down our choices? Play some bets.
Well, before we jump into betting strategies, I think we need to really look at some of the other factors that could influence this race, like running styles and track bias. Those are the things that can really, really affect the outcome, especially in a tight race like this one.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my interest. Let's unpack those factors, see how they might change our predictions.
So you mentioned running styles, and that's something we really should look at. I mean, we've got, some front runners, we've got some closers, and we've got some horses that kind of fall in between those two, and that can really, make things interesting. It's not just how fast a horse can run, it's when they make their move.
Okay, yeah, break it down for me. How do those running styles affect the outcome of a race like this?
Well, in a sprint, the front runners, they have that advantage, right? They can set the pace. They can get out to an early lead and try to, control the race from the front. We've already talked about a couple of potential front runners here, Ellen Mishkin and Maize Zing Dotie. And if both of those horses break well, we could see a real battle for the lead right out of the gate.
So are you saying front runners are the way to go? Should we just ignore the closers?
Not necessarily. Closers, they have their own advantages. They rely on patience and timing. They'll sit back early in the race, conserve their energy, and then they'll try to make that big move, in the final stretch. A closer can really capitalize if those front runners set a, super fast pace and tire themselves out. Maggy's Palace, that's a perfect example of a closer who could, benefit from that kind of scenario.
So it sounds like we really got to pay attention to the pace. If it's a speed duel up front, that could be a big opportunity for a closer like Maggy's Palace to come in and steal the win.
Exactly. And that's what makes horse racing so unpredictable. It's this dynamic puzzle. You've got the pace, you've got the running styles, you've got the jockey strategy, all these things that can influence the outcome.
It's like a chess match on hooves. Okay, so you also mentioned track bias. So what is that, and how do we even factor that into our predictions?
Track bias basically refers to any unevenness or inconsistencies in the racing surface that might give an advantage to horses running in certain lanes. It could be the firmness of the track, the moisture level, even how the track is maintained. In this particular race, the Brisnet data is showing a possible bias favoring the whale. So that means horses running closer to that inside rail, they might have a slight edge.
So we should be looking for horses that like to run near the rail.
It's something to think about, but it's not a guarantee. Some horses, they prefer to run on the outside, even if there's a rail bias. And the jockeys, they play a role too. They might try to position their horse to take advantage of that bias, or they might, decide to completely avoid it.
Okay, this is a lot to take in. Like, we need a PhD in horse racing to understand all this stuff. But I guess that's what makes it so much fun. It's like a behind the scenes look at how you actually handicap a horse race.
Absolutely. And remember, no matter how much data we look at, there's always that element of unpredictability in horse racing, and that's part of the thrill.
Well said. So with all this talk about running styles and pace and track bias, I'm really curious to hear what your predictions are. Who do you think has the best chance to win this race, and why?
You're putting me on the spot here. Okay. If I had to choose one horse right now, based on, everything we've talked about, I'd probably go with Maggy's Palace.
Ooh, interesting. Tell me more. Why Maggy's Palace?
Well, first of all, I'm impressed with her consistency at this level. She's proven she can compete against these types of horses. Her recent form is strong. Her speed figures are going up, and I really like that late running style, especially if there's a fast early pace.
Makes sense. Sounds like you're banking on that speed duel up front to set up Maggy's Palace for that late surge.
Exactly. Of course, it's horse racing. Anything can happen. But I think Maggy's Palace has a really good shot.
Okay, I'm taking notes. Maggy's Palace is definitely on my radar now. But before I lock in any bets, I want to dig a little deeper into some of those data points we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Especially those speed ratings and how those compare to the prime power ratings.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Those speed ratings can give us some really good clues, especially when we consider them in the context of the horse's overall performance profile.
So we've talked about running styles, track bias, jockey trainer combos, all that. But I want to go back to those speed ratings. Remember Clover Street? one of the dark horse picks. Her last race speed rating was 85, tied for the highest in the field. But her prime power rating is only 124, much lower than, some of those favorites. So
Yeah.
so how do we make sense of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it just shows why we can't just look at, one number. That 85 speed rating, it tells us how fast she ran in her last race, but it doesn't tell us, the whole story. It doesn't tell us about her overall ability or how she'll do against tougher competition. The prime power rating, it looks at, the bigger picture. It considers her whole performance history, the class level, jockey, and trainer stats, everything. So Clover Street might have had a great day last time, but her overall profile suggests she might have a tougher time in this race.
Right, it's like judging a basketball player. Based on one really good game, they might have scored a bunch of points.
Yeah.
But if they've been playing against, weaker teams, it doesn't mean they're going to dominate in the NBA.
Exactly. Context is key. Now let's look at Sue Ellen Mishkin. She's got that super high prime power rating, 130.2, but her last race speed rating was only 79. Seems like a big difference.
Yeah, and we talked about how her last race wasn't her best. But if her prime power is so high, shouldn't we still be, optimistic about her? Which number do we trust more?
Well, that's the art of handicapping, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I think we gotta figure out why that speed rating was so low. Was it, super tough competition? Were the track conditions bad? Or was it a sign that, her form is declining? The racing form report they suggested.
Yeah.
That she might be better suited to shorter distances. So maybe that last race, which was, a little longer, maybe it wasn't a true reflection of her abilities.
It's like we're detectives. Trying to put together all the pieces of the puzzle to figure out which horse is most likely to win.
And speaking of clues, remember True Empress, her best speed at this distance, it's almost exactly the same as the average winning speed for these types of races. She might be a long shot, but that stat tells us that she could definitely pull off an upset. And with that new trainer, there's always a chance, that she's going to improve.
Okay, so we've talked about the favorites. We've looked at the dark horses. We've analyzed the running styles, the track bias, those speed ratings, everything. I've crunched the numbers. I've looked at all the possibilities, and I'm ready to make my pick. Drum roll, please. I'm going with a Maize Zing Dotie.
Wow, bold choice. I love it.
I know that layoff is a little scary, but I just can't ignore her record. Multiple allowance race wins. She knows the track. And her best speed at this distance, it's right up there with the top contenders. Plus, her trainer, he seems to know how to get those horses ready after a layoff. I'm feeling a little risky today, so I'm going to put my money on a Maize Zing Dotie.
I admire your confidence, and even though I'm leaning towards Maggie's Palace, I wouldn't be surprised at all if a Maize Zing Dotie ended up in the winner's circle.
That's what makes horse racing so great, right? We can analyze, we can predict, but in the end, it's up to the horses to decide who crosses that finish line first. So to all our listeners out there, who are you rooting for? Let us know. Tell us your picks and why. We can't wait to see how this race turns out.
And no matter who you choose, remember to bet responsibly and enjoy the thrill of the race.
Happy handicapping, everyone.